Okay, well, as a quick look at the names here, it looks like we got a great audience. I know some of you on today's call had joined us for the user conference, and so this might be a little bit of a repeat for those who have met Orion there, but for others who were not able to attend the user conference, I think you're in for a great treat here. Orion is the founder of Queryon. They develop an application that we're partnering with them on to help what I call kind of off ramp and on ramp data into your other systems, whether it be your project management information system, your financial system, resource planning, risk profiling, all these other systems that can really value the schedule quality data that Schedule Validator delivers to you. So again, let's make this an interactive session. I am recording so we can share later. But I was going to open up the conversation to say, if your project schedule data was a 70s rock song, what is that song type of thing? Are you on a dark desert highway from Hotel California and the Eagles, or are you, Sister Sledge with, We Are Family type of thing, and your data is already working well together? But whatever your song is, I hope that you'll see today as a great way to think about how you can take this data and really harmonize it across your organization and get a lot more value out of it going forward. So with all those things being said, Orion, I'll hand it over to you, and we can spend the next 30 minutes or so going over the offering, and certainly, folks, if you have questions, throw in the chat, and I'll help interact with Orion and get those questions answered.
Great. Thanks, John. Not John. Thanks, John Impersonator.
Yeah, exactly. I'm Todd.
Yeah, so thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it. See some names from the conference. So good to see some folks and maybe some new folks. Today, we're going to talk about data and telling your project story, why that's so important. I'm going to talk a little bit about this by telling you a story. So first up, we'll talk a little bit about myself, and then I'll give you a little case study about how to combine multiple data sets in and what we learned from that, introduce you to Queryon One and Schedule Validator and kind of explain how we got to this point, which ties into the story. And then finally, we'll leave you with some takeaway tools. So as Todd said, any questions that you want to throw out as we're going through this are certainly welcome. So go ahead and we can make it as interactive as possible. So just to tell you a little bit about myself, my name is Orion Matthews. I founded Queryon as a spin-out company in 2015 in Washington, D.C. Since that point in time, we've been a data analytics focused company looking to innovate in the data space for construction GCs and owners. So we've learned a lot over the last 10 years, and I'm excited to kind of share one of the projects with you. We call this From Siloed to Synced. It was a project that we were brought in on in the very beginning. Sort of during the appraise stage, we were involved in the PICA project. I'm originally from Alaska, so this project was kind of near and dear to my heart. And just to give you a little bit of overview about PICA, the PICA project is one of the largest oil developments in the United States right now. It started execute about 2 years ago. And I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of this project. When we sort of started this project, there was a team of really about 10 folks. And we had an opportunity to kind of do this from the beginning. And it has a lot of challenges. So first off, it has a very short winter construction season in Alaska, approximately 90 to 120 days. So when you're thinking about your schedule, there's really not a lot of float in there. And there's a lot of critical path issues. In addition, it was a modular construction project. We had ice roads that were bringing in stuff through. Obviously, there's weather delays, there's travel restrictions, there's a lot of permitting that goes into putting together a project like this. It's a $2.6 billion project, and we were looking to execute it in 2 seasons. So you can imagine there was a lot of front-end loading going on in this project. The contracting approach, obviously we had work packages and a number of contractors and various folks involved in this project, all of which resulted in some data challenges. So at the very front of this project, what we saw was that we had a lot of different systems, and not a lot of clarity. We had all of our scheduling was in P6. We had cost data actuals in SAP. Tell me if this story isn't familiar. Of course, we were doing our EVM in Queryon, and we had SAP PPM, so two systems together. Risk, permitting, contingency, things like that, we had in Excel. So again, everything was kind of fragmented. And as we learned in the Schedule Validator conference from Simon, it always comes down to the data that we have. So we saw there was two major issues that we saw from this. The first issue is that when your tools are disconnected, it results in delayed decisions. So they kind of say the right data at the wrong time is still the wrong data. So having your data live in one app and another, what ended up happening is people would bring their data into one file and make up some numbers, and then another department might make up some different numbers, and maybe you had some fights, you had silos, things were unclear. So this disconnected tools was a real problem for the organization, and we saw early on that it was going to be a major issue. The second is that you would have bad data, and those would result in bad decisions. So as everybody was pulling data into various spreadsheets, or kind of not knowing where the actual source of truth was for information, because there were so many different systems, it resulted in some garbage in, garbage out. And ultimately, the worst case scenario was looking like it could happen, which is broken trust in the data. If you're an executive and you know that 1 out of 10 times that you use a number from someone, it's going to be wrong, that error rate is way too high. So they'll just stop using your data, and you'll end up with lots of silos. So what we realized is, okay, we had an opportunity at the start of this project try and lay down some good fundamentals. And it really starts with the process first, and then the technology second. So I'm going to briefly touch on both of those areas. As we like to say, process before tool. The shoes don't make a great runner. The shoes help a great runner run really great. So we partnered up with Tanya White. She was the senior project services manager at Santos to help sort of put together some really great processes to make sure that the technology we were putting in place was going to be great. If you hit the QR code in this presentation, you can get the presentation that Tanya and I put together that really dives in deep about how we did this. It's a cool presentation. I encourage you to check it out. It really started with sort of 5 major pieces. First is to create a reporting strategy. And what I mean by this is really, it's not a set of action items. It was really to say, okay, what are we going to report on? What information do executives need? How are we actually staffing and operationalizing this? So having a reporting strategy is super key. The second important thing was creating scope with a standard WBS. And when I say that, what I mean is that we went through the WBS that I'm sure everybody uses, and we went through all the different stakeholders and defined what WBS codes meant to them and resolved conflicts. So we had sort of a good key that we could put together across multiple systems. The third thing is we set up data requirements early on the project. We did put those in contractually enforce them, but honestly, it's less about contract and more about the relationship, working with all the various stakeholders within the business and outside of the business to come up with like, this is the data we need from you, this is when we need it, and this is how it needs to be presented to us. And so we worked with them. We also established a reporting calendar that had a 12-month look ahead. We had blackout dates for staff and really got very specific about your data comes in on this date. We're going to grab it. We're going to connect it to these other data sources and have this reoccurring process. In our case, we do monthly reporting. And finally, we established what we call the data harvest process, where all the stakeholders have an opportunity to submit their data. And at the end of that, we have a review period, and then we have a second harvest. And at the end of that second harvest, that's usually good enough to take and finalize and then share those numbers out. So these 5 steps, and again, if you're really interested, we've got that link there, and you can dive even deeper on what it takes to actualize the process. Okay. Process out of the way, let's talk about the part I'm excited about, which was the tech. So what we did to kind of create this one system, one source of truth is first, we created a data warehouse that, for those of you that don't know, is a place where all your information from the different systems can come together and you can connect it. And so we started reaching out to different systems like P6, Queryon, Excel, SAP. And by being framed by this process, we were able to kind of integrate those, tackle the data issues, which I'll show you some tools at the end of this presentation about how we did that. It's not easy, but I think there's some helpful stuff in here for you. And then we really focused on the story. So what that means is we took designers and we worked with the executives from the top down rather than the bottom up. So instead of saying P6 is telling us this is what your schedule looks like, we said, what do you want to see? We worked on the corporate standards, then we also worked with the executives to figure out what the reporting should look like. And then we took it to the systems and figured out how to get that data out of it. So it was a user-driven reporting project. Finally, we trained the users, and then lastly, we sort of iterated and improved. So that's kind of the story about how we put together Santos's reporting. And how did it go? It went great. We have a self-service data warehouse now. The project is on track. We've identified major issues as we sort of linked up cost and schedule, and we're able to tell that data story. So the project executives have dashboards. The information is flowing from the field all the way up. It's been a really great project. The automation, the data validation is in place. And in order to make this work, we had to build data validation tools. And the reason I have a star on there is because this ties into Schedule Validator and why I'm so excited about the partnership that we have with them. Because what we learned was that the data was not great. The schedule data and the cost data oftentimes would come in and it wouldn't be correct. And so the only way that we were able to get the reporting out the door at the speed we needed was by building our own data validation tools. So we built, so getting into that, really we had three things I want to share with you about what we learned doing this project. The first is that data warehouses are fantastic. I'm a big fan of them. I think they're a lot easier to do today than 10 years ago. And then number two, with that asterisk, is that data validation is everything. And then the third point that was kind of tough is that custom building your validation and your warehouse is risky and expensive. And the part about that validation, and the reason that I'm so excited about integrating into Schedule Validator, is that we built something that is so primitive compared to the tool that you have at your disposal. And for us, it was sort of like the bare minimum. And now I see that by using tools like Schedule Validator and integrating those into the data warehouse and that harvest process, it really accelerates and is an opportunity for you to have amazing reporting right now in a way that I really think data warehouses in the past really suffered from the bad data problem. And so tools like Schedule Validator are really almost like a secret key to unlocking how to do data warehousing right and establish that user data trust. So I'm excited to present to you. Todd came to me and said, let's integrate. We're launching this API. I said, that's a fantastic idea from all the lessons learned. And so we've produced this product for you called Queryon One. And it integrates with Schedule Validator, and it's standardizing the best of our learnings from over $10 million of consulting in the data warehouse product. It integrates directly with Schedule Validator using its APIs. And so what does it do? Well, like Todd said, maybe we got to update this, Todd, to talk about being in a rock band, but it's like an on-ramp, off-ramp for your data. So it's taking all the raw information from your data systems like P6, Procore, Excel, SAP, and Schedule Validator, and then it's transforming them into reliable role-based reporting in one platform. Why do I think you need this? Well, as we saw from the story, integrated reporting is really a key way to execute a project and reduce the cost. The ROI numbers are pretty awesome on investment in reporting. I believe it's $13 for every $1 you spend on reporting. The only other item that gives you a higher ROI on your project would be investing in risk. So why is it helpful? I think our industry needs better data standards. I really do. I think it needs data reporting solutions. We have a lot of really awesome tools, but when you actually look at building out a reporting strategy, you've got great processes and we have great conceptual diagrams, but nobody's actually come down and said, this is a good data standard for how to do reporting across multiple data systems. I think data unification should be easier and cheaper. I know other industries have it better than us. So I really want to create something here, and in partnership with Schedule Validator, it's going to make it easier for our industry. And the evolution of this really comes out of this concept in programming that we call dry, which is if your code is repeating itself, you need to refactor your code. And so what we've been seeing over the years consulting in this space is that we're producing a lot of the same visuals and we're doing a lot of the same work for customers. And so our goal is to productize the pieces where we can create common ground to accelerate the implementation of integrated reporting across enterprises. And one final point, I've worked with IT departments a lot, and I really think our industry needs to lead this effort. I think IT is very important to be involved, but I hire the IT people. We have computer scientists and data engineers, and I teach them project controls. And what I've seen is that it takes about 6 months for somebody that's technical to understand the space we do. And that's why I think it's really important that you don't just toss this to the IT team and say, yeah, data warehouse us. Because the concepts that we're working with really need to be led by us in partnership with IT. So what is the unified data model? At the core of Queryon One, what we're talking about is a data model that's standardized. It integrates and is designed specifically for P6, SAP, Excel-based structures. We've standardized some of the most common things like the project ID, your finance ID, WBS, and handling dates and period-based reporting and EVM calculations. It has an Excel-first mindset, so we can download into Excel. It's not supposed to replace your ability to do ad hoc reporting in the tools that you want to do it. And finally, it's eliminating a lot of cleaning and standardization, assuming that you're integrated into Schedule Validator, which I think you should do if you're using a data warehouse. So John Jackson had a really great quote. He said, if you have good scheduled data, it's the #1 leading indicator of the health of your project. And I couldn't agree more. The one thing I like to rib John about is I would say if you share your good scheduled data, it's the #1 leading indicator of the health of your project. So for us, it's all about ingesting the data, validating the data using a tool like Schedule Validator, and then reporting on the data. So real quick, brief overview on Queryon One. Basically, it's a modular system, so you can pick the systems you want to integrate with. We've built the APIs here at this layer. And then you have what's called a data warehouse and a data lake. That's where your information goes. And finally, that drives reporting. And we'll take a peek at that reporting. The nice thing about the reporting is that these are templates that you can customize. The reporting is in Power BI. So if most organizations are operating in that layer. So the reports that you love, or if you're delivering reports already in Power BI, or you already have a data warehouse, that's fine. This tool can plug into those to really quickly onboard Schedule Validator data into your system. Or if you don't have a warehouse or you don't have other systems that you want to connect, we can connect those as well. So it's as little or as much of a warehouse as you need. And it integrates into existing warehouses. Again, some ready-made Power BI reports. So let's take a look at them. The goal here is that before, you can see you might have had single systems that are delivering reporting, which is great. And our goal here is to get integrated systems so that your reporting from these multiple tools can be in one. And what I really mean by that is the ability to have data. So in this case, you've got some Schedule Validator data on this dashboard, and then you might have some SAP data here, and then the forecasting data might be coming in this case from Contruent, and then you have some P6 data down here, ideally all connected. And this visual, really, when you referencing back to the Pika project, was an extremely simple but very beneficial tool for us. So a lot of our engineers and project leads, we would say, hey, here's your sort of schedule milestones for this project. Obviously, you're looking at the critical path, but what we would look for is we would say, well, your project ends on this date. And the construction is complete here. Why is the spend curve? Why is there spend here? And what was really fascinating is we had a lot of conversations like that where people would say, oh yeah, well, we're doing this other stuff. And so the cost and the schedule, by visualizing them together on the same page, it was really easy for people that understood the project data or that understood what was actually going on the ground to spot problems. And then we'd have those conversations, and it really drove a lot of efficiencies. And not only did we report this on a monthly basis, but people could self-serve this to kind of resolve issues as they saw fit. Again, and I'll just blow through these really quick. If you're interested, you can hit me up later and we can do some demonstrations. Here's an example of some progress curves, just sort of 30,000-foot view, pulling in data from multiple places. Here's a project health. You can see where the project's at in project phases. Risk matrices, obviously very important, with a list of some of your forecasted risks, some critical path trending data coming in from Schedule Validator here, and then your activities table. Up here, obviously, you have all the filters you'd ever want. This one's a really great one because you have all your data in one place, kind of showing where your progress is based on cost versus where your progress might be based on schedule. Again, just some more great visuals for you. And then finally, this is an example of something that is sort of customized, but this is integrating GIS, ArcGIS mapping data so that you can click on individual pipelines and work packages and sort of take a look at where you're at in the project progress. And a lot of this is made possible by having a standard WBS. And you can see here, you're getting progress data, and you're getting some schedule information and some budget information as well. Great interactive map for the high-level thinkers on the project. So with Queryon One and Schedule Validator, one of the great things is all of the reports that you know and love, we went ahead and built those in Power BI, so you can just get started plugging those in to your dashboards and bringing those into the data warehouse and setting them alongside the rest of your data. And so then let's get to the takeaway part of this project. Every time I do these presentations, a lot of people come to me and they say, hey, that's cool, Orion, but your presentation, you started the project early, great story, but our data's a mess. We've got, everyone's balkanized, everything's kind of in different silos, and it's just this giant yarn ball, and I cannot untangle it. So great story, but not for me. And so I'd like to give you is sort of two things here to help you with that problem specifically. The first is the periodic table of data issues. So over the last 10 years, as we've been working with data, we've seen consistently that you can distill down data issues and you can decompose the problem. And why did we do this? The reason is that I've seen project engineers and computer scientists sit across the table in a meeting room together and not understand each other at all. Techie might be saying, hey, your data's bad. And the project engineer is saying, I don't understand what you're saying. You want $20,000 for what? And so they go back and forth, and ultimately it never gets resolved. It could last years. And it's all because we're missing a common language to communicate what's wrong with your data, what do we need to do to fix it, how long is it going to take, and how much money do you need? And so this periodic table of data issues, I would encourage you to use. It's free. You've got the QR code there. And it just sort of breaks things down. You've got different elements down below. Maybe it's an issue with the visuals of your data. Maybe you have a broken UI, chart junk. Maybe your scale's off. Maybe it's a personnel issue. Maybe you've got some skill gaps. You need better training. Maybe your user clarity is bad. You have change resistance. Maybe it's an actual data issue where you're missing data. You've got problems where you're transmitting it and it's getting polluted during transmission. Similarly, we've broken this in. You've got flow, governance, your security issues. Simple access issues can delay getting data solved for years. So I'd highly encourage you to use a tool like this. So the next time someone says, hey, my data's bad, or IT is giving you trouble and you just can't get over the hump, say, use this, you point out the elements to me that are a problem. All right, last but not least, and then we'll turn it over and get some Q&A. I'd like to ask the question, does anyone understand what a firefly, and fireflies blinking and a pendulum has to do with each other. And for those of you that were at the conference, pretty much, I think I confused everyone there. I'm going to try again. So in 1659, Christian Hughes was a mathematician, and he came up with the concept of entrainment. Really basic. It says that systems that are connected together can synchronize. And what I mean by this is like in organic systems like fireflies and in data systems as well, what you find is that if you have a structured, systematic process that couples a system together, you can synchronize those systems. And so one of the great benefits of using something like Queryon One and Schedule Validator is that through the process of structured synchronization of all these data systems, what you'll notice is that they start to get in sync. So my pitch to you is follow the fireflies, synchronize your data with Schedule Validator and these tools today. Thank you, Todd. I will turn this over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it very much. We had a couple of questions in the chat. I've answered them a little bit here, but Pedro asked about kind of, is this open to systems outside of the ones you've shown here? And I said it is. Anything that has basically an open API can be brought into Queryon One and obviously, synced across the platform. So again, you may have a different PMIS system. You may have other repositories of data that you want to bring in there, and we can work with you to bring that in. And then Abdul, you asked a question regarding, obviously bad data is not great. As Orion had shared, we think just managing those individual silos of data, bad or good, is difficult. So start to bring them together into a visual that you can then take action on to improve that data. We think that starting with good quality data coming out of Schedule Validator will enhance this process as you bring the data into Queryon One. But that's obviously the path that we'd like to go down with you on moving forward there. So, and we're recording now, and I'll share the recording, and then you'll have access to some of the data regarding the charts and that type of thing there. I'll open up to any other questions. If you want to unmute yourself and ask a question of Ryan or myself about this, happy to take that on. Okay. Well, we had a couple good interactions out of the user conference. We have a couple customers that have started this process, and we'd like to add in certainly a couple more. As far as I won't call it a pilot because Orion's very good at what he's done, and this is something he's very familiar with. But it's a little bit of a pilot from Schedule Validator perspective. So would love to work with you and take advantage of what Orion and his team have already built. I think that's really maybe one of the biggest advantages here is that his team has done a lot of this building already. So you're not paying for a net new build across these systems. But anyhow, you can have the opportunity to leverage what's already kind of previously been made, and we can pull it together, thereby reducing the cost of creating such a thing for your own organization. I know I've spoken to a number of you already about your approach, and the question I have is just kind of, buy versus build yourself. Are you really in the business of building out data warehouses and data lakes and that type of thing? Or could you leverage the expertise of Orion and his team to help you do this? So happy to have one-on-one conversations. Melissa, Steve, and Courtney are on the call as well. And they'll be happy to reach out to you and talk about, a specific conversation with Orion going forward. So, all right, good. And then obviously I see, so yeah, so the Raphael, you're asking about the the use of the Validator V1 API, and
Yes.
we now have moved into the V2. And if you were using the old V1 version, we
Mhm.
have some tech tips on how to make that conversion into the V2 data. You just need to redirect the API address from what was previously the schedulevalidator.com now to go to the app.schedulevalidator.com. So I'll send that out to anyone that's interested in that. But if you're using the V1 version of the old API, you will need to make a modification to get the new endpoints now available through the V2 version there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Are there any other questions, maybe not on the topic of Queryon One, but more specific to Schedule Validator anyone has? All right, perfect. Well, I'm going to stop the recording.